day and welcome everybody to today's cloud coaching session. I'm your host, Alexander Hödicke, and today we're going to talk about modernizing OBIEE with the latest trends of Oracle Analytics Clouds. Today's presenter will be Christian Berg. So today's speaker is Christian Berg. He is a specialist in our EMEA organization. He has been for more than over 20 years a specialist around the analytics, data warehouse, data engineering, AI, machine learning domain. He has been consulting and CEO and a managing director for many years, and he's part of the Oracle University organization and has did some teaching there as well. He is well known for his evangelism and advocacy and a public speaker on this topic, and as an ACE director for analytics. And yes, and the bottom there you see he has been spoken on 60 plus worldwide conferences and 140 different talks. With that said, I'm happy to hand it over to Christian on the topic of modernizing OBIEE with the latest trends of Oracle Analytics Clouds. Have fun, everyone.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Also from me, a warm welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Let me just switch over and let's jump right into the topic. So today we're going to look at the process of modernizing your currently existing OBIEE or Oracle Analytics Server estate on premises into the Oracle Cloud. For this, we will be looking at a couple of things. So first of all, obviously, we will start with a small product comparison. So OBIEE and also OAS, by the way, versus OAC. What are the differences that you should expect? What are you going to be using in the cloud? Then also the benefits. What does this modernization actually bring to you in terms of benefits for your implementation, for your projects? Then we will go really step by step through the upgrade process, the technical process that you're required to do in order to move your content and your whole solution from the current on-premises into the cloud. And then last but not least, I'll talk shortly about a couple of the pitfalls and issues that we've seen in implementation projects, things that customers found in their projects, or just general issues that you may encounter when moving from something that's on-prem into the cloud, because you're not doing just a technological, but also a thematic change that actually follows a different philosophy. Right. Let's jump right in with the product comparison. And here we have a couple of aspects that you have to keep in mind, especially when you're still on OBIEE, so the old product line that has now been replaced with Oracle Analytics Server for on-premises and Oracle Analytics Cloud for the cloud version. There is specifically in the whole self-service area around what's called the data visualization component, there's a whole lot of new features. So OBIEE, if you're, for example, on one of the terminal releases of the 12C family, had a very small, a very nascent data visualization capability, which obviously has now grown by leaps and bounds, because OBIEE, even if you're on 12.2.1.4, which is the terminal release, that was 7 years ago. So you are actually facing a situation where you have 6-7 years of product enhancement, product development, and new features that have grown and that are there now in the product for you free to use. And that obviously includes all the capabilities about data preparation, data flows, engineering, the full data visualization capabilities that are in OAC now, then the whole storytelling aspects. There were already some sharing collaboration features existing in OBIEE before, but now obviously they have been extended. And Oracle Analytics Cloud, as the new flagship for the product line, has much more mobile exploration capabilities by the use of 2 different mobile applications dedicated to consuming and creating analytical content starting from your mobile. Going further, then we also have the more technical aspects. Especially if you're a developer of OBIEE, you will know that the enterprise semantic models, meaning the repository, the RPD, was managed by a fat client installation, the admin tool. We'll see that in a moment. Now with OAC, we have 2 options for this. We have the fat client installed on your laptop or workstation, and also we have a web-based interface that allows you to do these things in a purely web-based environment without installing any software. And then for data replication for applications like Oracle applications, this is a completely new feature that didn't exist in OBIE at all, which is a part of the Oracle Analytics Cloud platform. Moving forward, let's look a little bit at the AI and machine learning capabilities, because again, a lot has happened in the development lifecycle of Oracle Analytics as a platform, which is why you see basically a no in the whole OBIE column, and everything that's natural language generation, natural language processing, voice search, AI generated automated insight, data enrichment, and so on. This is completely new functionality that you can use in Oracle Analytics Cloud. This is specifically one of the areas that the product has evolved. This is the focus area of Oracle Analytics, and this is really where our newest features are in and where you can benefit from them at most. And also, if you look at the last part here, leveraging database analytics, meaning we're not just giving you Oracle Analytics Cloud as an analytical platform which extends your capabilities, but also we want to be able to use whatever you have already. Meaning, if you have an Oracle database that has all these nice features built into the database, we do not want to reinvent the wheel and have you recreate this in the Oracle Analytics Cloud. We want to be able to use it directly. Just like we can also use directly all the capabilities of the Oracle Cloud itself. So not the Analytics Cloud, but the larger Oracle Cloud, meaning if you have an Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse, or you are actually using the Oracle Analytics, the Oracle AI services, like the language service, the image processing, and so on and so on. You can directly embed this into the Oracle Analytics Cloud. Now, for especially OBIE developers and users out there, here is really a high-level overview of which modules did you have before. For example, Publisher, the Pixel Perfect Reporting, Answers, the classic ad hoc analysis interface, the dashboards, and so on. This is mainly for you as a guideline, because in Oracle Analytics, we actually do not make these distinctions anymore. You just have the product. If you're coming from OBIE, you will anyway find all of this again, except for one or two things that have been removed from the product, simply because it doesn't fit the new cloud structure, as you will see in a moment. And that would be, for example, in this case, Essbase. So don't worry, you can still run this on OCI, you can still run it on our cloud infrastructure. It is still supported as a data source, and so on and so on. It's just that we say it's not included in the cloud perimeter for OAC. It's one of the data sources that we attack, just like any other Oracle database, MySQL, and so on and so on. Now, obviously, when talking about this, we also have to be very careful, because you are coming from an on-premises world. You're coming from a world where you install software on a server, and you are moving to PaaS, you're moving to platform as a service. So this fundamental change means obviously that certain things will no longer be possible. You do not have access to the file system, you don't have access to the operating system. So all these nitty-gritty tiny detail modifications that you used to do on OBIE, where you literally went into every single config file, that is no longer supported. What we are supporting is parameterization of the platform. So you can change the platform to fit to your needs within certain limits. You cannot go and change the files, period. And that obviously means that if you think back to what we had on premises, there are certain things that have been deprecated, so being removed from the product in the future, or already be supported, because, as I said, technology evolves. And for example, something like Flash templates, nobody uses Flash anymore, which is why it's completely removed from the platform as a whole right now. Same thing also for the mobile app designer. Oracle actually gives you the mobile applications now, so you do not need the mobile application designer anymore. These are all changes that have happened over the last couple of years that now, when you move in the cloud, you will be faced with, simply because there is this huge gap in between where the product has evolved. So I've listed all of these, first of all, in a general kind of way, and you can go through them. And then obviously, very important, there are also things that have changed in terms of the data sources, like very old data sources no longer being supported, or flat file sources in the RPD, mind you, no longer being supported simply because the platform as a whole does it already. Meaning, just because the feature is quote unquote deprecated doesn't mean it doesn't work anymore. It just works differently, again, because the platform does it for you. Just like the mobile application, we do it for you, you don't have to do it yourself. Then also in terms of security, there were a couple of changes simply because we are in the cloud. We are actually using the cloud security backend, and we're integrating with your currently existing security. So there is no more manual creation of a whole own security world as we had before on premises. And in terms of system configuration, I mentioned it, you do not have access to the file system, you do not have access to the operating system. It's a platform service. So all these things that you did before, they have changed. You now have system settings pages where you administer and where you parameterize your platform. You no longer go into, for example, the instance config and type in your resolution for a symbolic URL or changing the number of rows to be downloaded. This is platform settings. Now, with this out of the way, let's go to the modernization benefits, because as I said, you're making a fundamental and almost philosophical change going from on-premises into the cloud. So what does it mean for you in terms of modernization? So the benefits obviously are, and this is where every technically oriented people out there should just jump at the solution, because it's fully cloud native, meaning you don't patch anymore, you don't upgrade anymore, you don't do the security manually anymore. It's the platform doing it for you. You can, for example, say, well, actually, I'm in the test system, I want to wait for Oracle to upgrade my instance for another 2 or 3 weeks while I do some testing. You can do this. But after that, you don't do anything anymore. Oracle does it for you. The platform is automatically upgraded and patched. Then there is no additional licensing. Very important distinction now to the new platform compared to before, because if you were or are an OBIEE client, you will know that data visualization, so the new component in the OBIEE world, had an additional license cost attached. Now, basically, you get the whole package and everything is included. We're currently standing at 6 releases per quarter, per year, for OAC. That turns out to 1 to 2 per quarter. Whereas Oracle and its server, so the on-premises version, only has 1 yearly update. And again, you get these 6 releases automatically for the cloud. Whereas even if you're going for OAS, so the new on-premises version, once per year, you have to do the upgrade yourself. And when there's a patch in between, for example, a bundle patch, you have to patch this yourself and test it, obviously, and put it through the whole dev test prod cycle and so on and so on. This is all gone. And as I said before, we have a full integration with all the other Oracle Cloud capabilities, meaning autonomous databases, AI services, the machine learning engine in the background, etc., etc. And this is very important, especially if you want to go into the area of more autonomous AI and ML, simply because, do you want to run a 64 CPU Oracle Analytics instance just because you do AI? Or do you think, well, actually, my money and my calculating effort is spent better when doing it in the infrastructure, meaning where the data lies? My database is anyways well-sized, so I let database do what it does best, and OAC do what OAC does best, that is, visualizing and making sense of this information. I won't be transferring millions and millions of rows, just the output of my algorithms. And then, last but not least, obviously, 2 benefits: scale as you need and pay what you use. You do not leave things running just because. Again, in the example before, I would never let 64 OCPUs running 24/7, 365 days a year. That's not the purpose. I can scale up when I need performance, I can scale down when I don't need it. And then obviously, meaning my bill at the end of the month or at the end of the year will be significantly different because I only pay what I actually use. So this wraps up overview of the distinction between the on-premises world and the cloud world, and also the nascent benefits that are inside. Let's go to the process, because this is what you're all here for. This is what's really important for today. And actually, the process starts before you start migrating. And this is really important. First of all, we've quickly gone through this, but I'd just like to get this point across. It's very important to understand the architecture and the concepts that underlie OAC, simply because you are moving from on-premises to cloud. If this is your first step into the cloud world with any cloud, then you need to understand these concepts simply because things work different in the cloud. Review what you have currently in depth before upgrading, and tied to that, clean up what you have before upgrading. Trust me, this is really me speaking from experience. A minute spent here can mean hours saved later on. Think about your current installation. Think about what it meant doing a patching or doing an upgrade. It means regression testing. Do things still work? Are things still yielding results that we expect? This can mean many things, but most of all, it means time spent, money spent. And if you clean up what you have currently, your catalog, your repository, your basically whole implementation, trimming this down to what's actually required for a successful migration into the cloud will save you money, will save you time, will save you effort, and it's definitely the thing to do. Then we've been through this, but for your specific implementation, go through the list of deprecated and de-supported features. I keep repeating myself, but it's very important to realize you are moving over a gap in product features, product functionality, product capabilities of about 6 to 7 years, depending on where your starting point is. If you are one of the ones out there still on 11G, for example, then obviously the gap is way bigger and there's even more development that has been done. So things that you did manually, for example, may now have an intrinsic, automatic, systemic solution. So it's better to go for that than rehash whatever you had done manually. Then obviously also plan what you want to do with OAC on OCI. And that means your sizing, for example, and how should it be secured? How will I actually attack my data sources? Where are my data sources lying? Draw a picture. Nothing beats a piece of paper and a pen. Just draw this out and think about what you need. Then obviously you create your services. And then I spoke quickly about security, but think about how do you migrate your users to the cloud infrastructure? Do you actually migrate them, move them? Do you federate your authentication in OCI with a current security solution? These are very, very important steps that you need to think about, because obviously if you have, for example, completely dynamic row-wise security, completely dynamic assignment of application roles, where people see different things, can do different things, and can access different things depending on their actual needs and requirements in your organization, then obviously you need to think of, well, how do we do this in the cloud? Are we, as I said, migrating our users and installing kind of a new security in the cloud, or do we federate with your existing security environment? And then last but not least, ensure the connectivity to the data sources. Data sources nowadays can be anywhere. They can be in your data center on premises, they can be in your Oracle cloud, they can be in a different cloud, they can be file-based, they can be a REST API. And obviously, depending on how you secure your environment, not just in terms of who has access, but also in terms of how do you access this? Do you create an own VPN, a virtual cloud network behind it? Will you get to the data? Can you get to the data? Those are key questions. And the first part is really, that's the most important part for a good modernization, because it will ensure that you move the right things into the cloud and that you actually start with a cloud mindset. I always say, never just put old wine into new bottles because it will just be the same old wine. think about how you're doing things. Think about what you want to do. Do you just want to have another report engine just running in the cloud and not on premises? That's fine. But where are the additional intrinsic values? Where can you actually make money with this? Now, let's go through the actual migration step by step. And here I will be actually switching into a couple of environments that I've prepared for this. So first step, have your OBIE or OAS on premises and your OSC ready. For me, I've prepared this in here. I have a OAS in this case running somewhere. I have an completely empty, or obviously I'm using something that's quite advanced in terms of OAS. I could go back to OBIE. It's the same process, by the way. And then I've also prepared yet another instance where I've already uploaded the things so that we don't waste too much time just with file uploads today. And the very important thing is, obviously, if I look on OAS side, I have created for me a couple of dashboards and a couple of workbooks where I can just see data is coming back and I can verify actually hitting a data source, and I can reproduce this later on after the migration, because this is what we want to see. We want to see the data in the new environment. So this is the database. This is also an on-premises database that's residing on the same server, that is providing the data to my data visualization and to my classic analytics. Right. Then obviously the next step, very important, we have to create the bundle that you will migrate into the new environment. And in this case, you will have outlined in a second the process for OBIEE and the process for OAS. This will, in all cases, create a bar file, or we call it snapshot, that's the new terminology, which then will be uploaded to OAC, will be restored there as a restore point. And then we have to establish the data connectivity. I've mentioned this before. I'll actually do it live for you, but this is very important because what we're actually going to do is connect the cloud instance OAC to your on-premises sources. For this, we have to modify the old RPD. We're coming from an OBIE world. We have always an RPD which hosts our semantic models. And then we upload this RPD into the cloud. And then we can already test our data. So it's a couple of steps, very straightforward, but very important. Now, I mentioned this a couple of times. I just want to point it out very clearly again. If you're on older versions, like an 11G or 12C, don't worry, the process is there, the process is supported. It's not just OAS what I'm using at the moment. That's just slight differences. And I quickly want to point them out for you. If you're, for example, on 11G, there's actually a migration utility inside of OAC, where you simply go into OAC, you click download migration utility, you copy the tool, because it's just a file, copy it to your environment, you run the migration tool, which will create a bundle, and then you import that bundle into OAC. So it's a couple of steps more, simply because 11G is older technology, compared to 12C. 12C is quite straightforward. And here, by the way, I'm always talking about 12.214, and before that, 11.119. So the terminal releases of those two product families. That's very important. So the bar files that come out that you already used nowadays for moving between one environment to the other, those are compatible with Oracle Analytics Cloud. You can run that either with export archive on the command line, or when you're in the newer incarnation of on-premises, that is Oracle Analytics Server, you have the simple possibility to create snapshots. And obviously, these snapshots in the background are, again, bar files, which are in and of themselves compatible with OAC. So we can do it either command line or in GUI. Moving forward, the next step is then obviously importing the content into OAC. But first of all, I want to go back into my example, into my Oracle Analytics Server. So I have my Oracle Analytics Server Classic, I have my Oracle Analytics Server DV, and I will be not using the command line, I will be using the interface. So we start by going to the console, we go to snapshots, and in order to save time, I've already prepared these things. It's very simple. You can simply click here, create snapshot. give it a name, and then you decide what should be in the snapshot. I took everything, but you can see you can actually go and select custom and choose what should be included, what shouldn't be included. Again, there's a couple of things you cannot take out. But for example, if you say, well, this is a development environment where 2,000 different users have their own content, for example, so their own private user folders, and you know that that's actually where the most legacy stuff is. There's leftovers, there's thousands and thousands of objects that you actually don't want. Well, you just take it out and you only take the shared content, for example. But in my case, I've created an upgrade package containing everything. And in order to migrate this to the cloud, it's very simple. You hit export. It asks you for an encryption password, and they can save it either to the Oracle Cloud Storage into a bucket, or what I've done, into a local file system. As I said, I've prepared all this, and I have a full-scale bar file with everything, and I have a smaller one to make the upgrade process a little bit faster. And with that, we're already ready to move forward to the next step of the migration. Now, I've included the information here in detail for all the 11G users out there of where you can actually download and then upload and restore the BIE 11G bundle. Again, because the process is slightly different. Now, before we go to the connectivity, obviously, we need to take what we have here on premises and move it into the cloud. Let's go one step forward. So this is my OSC, this is my cloud system, and I can see there's nothing in there. It's a blank installation. There is nothing in the catalog. There are no data sources, no connection, nothing. So again, I go into the console, I choose snapshots, and in here, I've just created a blank restore point. In case I mess up anything, I can always go back. And it's very simple. I say import snapshot. See, without a virus scanner in this case, I choose it from my local file system. I take my, in this case, smaller bar file, so that's faster. Click open. I provide it with the encryption password that I'm specified. Here in the first place is this will not wipe out your system. Don't worry. What it does is just uploading the bar file into the cloud, and basically, so you have it ready as a restore point. It actually hasn't applied it. That's a very important thing. And in order to apply it to your system, you simply, again, hit the options button and then hit restore. Now, with restore, what happens is whatever is in that package will be applied to your system. And you have a couple of settings, again, very important ones. Do you want to replace the custom content in the snapshot content only? Do you want to replace everything, or do you want to pick and choose? In my case, I'm coming from an on-premises world. I want to have it available in the cloud. I would just say, well, replace everything that's in the snapshot. Thank you. And then you hit restore. I'm not going to hit that now because it's going to run a while. What I've done is actually in my second environment, prepare this. So I actually restored the snapshot and it's running. And I can see this by, I actually have my shared folders where everything is in. I can see the modernize folder where I added the example that I had before. I can see all the, for example, data sets. So the files that were used in OAS in order to do analytics on data sets, but there is no data connection. I'm not connected to any database, which I can prove simply by clicking on my data verification workbook that I created, which will obviously immediately fail and say, well, actually, I can't query this. There is no connectivity. So this is where you establish now the connectivity between OAC and your on-premises data source. And the very first thing that we obviously have to look at is the RPD. Because this is required for all RPDs. RPDs is where the on-premises world managed their data connectivity. And that doesn't matter, by the way, whether it's cloud or on-premises sources. You have to do this for all your sources. All the connections, this is very important, are now in the new platform managed in DV, in data visualization. So if I just look at the RPD that's actually underlying the solution that I'm showing you, I hope that it's big enough so that you can see. The connection pools that we have here typically contain a full address to a database that is lying somewhere. Obviously, we're in the cloud. That doesn't make sense anymore. And also, we're in the cloud. We now have multiple different ways to connect data, not just the RPD. And we have pooled these, we have combined these into basically the data connections of Oracle Analytics. So we're really talking about data connections for the platform. It doesn't matter whether you're doing RPD development, whether you're doing just DV development, etc., etc. Everything is in here. And this is really the place where we combine everything. Now, in order to establish this connectivity, let's switch back. We have to do this in the new DV console where all the connections are managed. A couple of things to watch out for. If you're using on-premises data sources, they may be secured in a very specific way. So you may need to configure private access channels, so really pipes that go from the Oracle Analytics Cloud into your on-premises data center. You may need to actually do this infrastructure work in the backend. And for all the ones that have already looked at the documentation and maybe have seen older versions, there was something called Remote Data Gateway. That was a technology that was put at your disposal in the beginning of the OAC product family's lifecycle. This is outdated. This is no longer recommended. The way to access your data on premises is definitely private access channels, where you specifically define the connectivity between your Oracle Analytics Cloud instance and your, for example, Oracle database instance in your own data center. Now, that said, let's jump over into the application, into OAC, and actually create our data connection. So I'm going to go create connection. As you can see here, there's a multitude of connections, and we're actually going to choose Oracle database. And this implicitly means this is an on-premises database. You can see here all the little clouds. We're going to go on-premise. And I'm going to just call this OAS, no, not the database for OAS on-prem. And here, I'm simply going to go into an advanced connection type. I'm going to go into my RPD. I'm going to copy out my connection string, put it here, put the password here. And now comes the very important part. I'm actually going to define this. This is a system connection, meaning all components of the system can use it. Let's hit save. It will immediately do a check in the background. Can I actually access the database? Successful. Let's inspect the object again. And now here, down at the bottom, we have a very important setting. That's the object ID. And this object ID, we're going to copy over. I'm going to go into the RPD. And down here are two new options compared to your OBIEE admin tool that you have. We're going to say use data connection. And as you can see, the login and the data source name, they have been grayed out. They will no longer be used. So this is just, old text that doesn't have any functionality anymore. In the object ID, we paste the string as we got it from the system. We hit OK. I'm going to do this from a second connection pool as well, which is actually the one getting the data. First one is for init blocks. We save it. Save the repository. I'm going to say ready for OAC. Let's replace this. And now we basically have an RPD that is ready to utilize my centrally defined data connections to the data source. Let's close this. And here now we do the upload step. We're going to go console again, snapshots. And here, what we're going to choose is actually replace data model. So what was in the upgrade package, the RPD itself, that actually has the wrong, quote unquote, wrong connectivities to the database. What we're going to do is just replace it with the one that has the correct connectivity. And we're going to hit replace. Now, there's several things happening in the background, obviously. First of all, the file gets uploaded, and then it gets transformed into the actual currently running and instantiated RPD inside of OAC. This will take a moment, so if there is any unanswered questions in the Q&A at the moment, Esmeralda, is there anything pending? I don't think so.
Nothing pending, Christian.
All right, nothing pending. In that case, well, it's already done. We can hit OK. So now we have an uploaded package, meaning our data sets, our catalog, our security, very important. And we have a new repository uploaded that actually utilizes the data connectivity which we just created. And we can simply verify this by going to our homepage and hitting the same workbook again. See, there must have been some nice little mistake that I did in the process. Let's move forward. I'm conscious of time and finish the process nevertheless. So as I said, we upload the modified RPD. We just did that. We replaced the data model. And then obviously now comes the other part, because now everything is in your environment, your security, your catalog, your RPD. So the three main pillars that you have inside of a bar file. However, there's a couple of tasks still missing. You will have to set up your mail server configuration, re-enable agents, so your delivery schedules. And this is a security measure that already existed in OBIEE and OAS, simply because you do not want all the agents that you transfer from one environment to the other to be automatically active and running all the time. You actually want to verify these things. You don't want to start spamming people with emails or with data. Then if you're using map layers and map configuration, you need to verify these settings. And then very important, as I said, we're conceptually moving from on-prem to the cloud. You have to verify the system settings versus the legacy configuration. And here, again, it is quite straightforward. I said multiple times, you do not have access to the files anymore. You don't have access to the operating system anymore. Everything you have access to and you can modify, you can parameterize, is in the console now. You have your maps. And very important, you have your system settings. This is basically, as you can already see here, email delivery, connections, formatting, and so on and so on. These are the things that before you did in config files on the file system of your host OS. This has all been moved into a thin client web interface where you parameterize things, and in the background, the platform then takes care of this. There is no more file modification. You actually do it in the system settings, and you basically put into the system settings whatever was in your legacy configuration on premises. Then I mentioned it, safe domains if you need them, for example, cross-site scripting, setting up a virus scanner. It already asked me when I did the file upload, and you test the rest of the content of the migrated services. So not just a couple of quick checks, can I actually read data through this connection, but are my reports still rendering the correct thing? Are my dashboards still looking as I expect them? And so on and so on. And there can be a couple of things that you will find that's gone awry. For example, if you've actually not just migrated the whole catalog, but there's, for example, a hard-coded reference to a URL in there of the address of your server. Well, you need to change these things because now it's running in the cloud. It actually has a different address, and so on and so on. Now, with this migration process in and of itself done, I quickly want to raise a couple of points about pitfalls and issues that we've seen that clients run into. And first of all, again, I'm rehashing what I said before, but this is very, very important. Your legacy configuration can actually be problematic. Some of the old stuff is no longer allowed. Some old versions weren't as strict as new ones, but most importantly, everything that you've done in your config files, you have done for reason A, B, or C. And this reason A, B, or C may no longer hold true. technology has evolved, the platform has evolved. Then the new standards exist for a reason. And this harks back to what I said, understand the concepts that are behind OIC. How is an Oracle cloud platform, or any cloud platform for that matter, different to something that I install on my laptop or on my server? The cleanup that I mentioned only bring necessary stuff into the new system. We've seen it time and time again that people got bogged down in migrations because they had a gazillion things to look at, simply because there was no cleanup before. One team did basically the migration, and then they said, well, okay, second team, now you can start testing. And second team testing basically had to go through every single thing there was, because there was no cleanup, there was no trimming down to the bare minimum necessary. And last but not least, don't try to conform the new system to old logic. Again, this goes to the distinction between on-premises and cloud. If you're working in cloud, you're working with a platform. Platform as a service, by definition, is something that is black boxed. It is something that, yes, you can parameterize, you can modify and parameterize to your needs, but you will not ever go into the level of detail that you did before. Extremely important point. Then one of the potential issues that we see is actually in the security. And here, everybody who has worked with OBIEE, or OES for that matter, will know the setup of the security. As you can see here, this is a snapshot from a 12c environment that I had, and this is pure 12c vanilla. The good thing is, obviously, the worlds are very much aligned, and in the migration, the scripts take care of these things. However, if you were managing your OBIEE manually or script-based, because that was also possible, obviously the perimeter of the policies that were there, that is tied to 12c, so some may be missing. And most importantly, you may have completely, out of you have your out-of-the-box configuration. You may have actually gone and created your own standalone security interpretation on the side. You may have created your own application roles with your own policies. So what we have here is basically a mixture of the old world, meaning 11G, and the new old world, meaning 12C OAS, but also OAC. And as I said, the migration scripts take care of most of this, but you need to watch out of what have you done in the background. Were there modifications done, for example, to the policies that actually do not fit the current architecture directly? Because if you upload, one of the first things that you will see, and this is kind of, you need to wait, because you will get some not authorized messages in the beginning. Once the security is applied, they will basically become useful and become usable again. This is just while the scripts are running and aligning the two security worlds. But the very important thing is, as I said, be mindful of your custom development. The application policies, so the actual sets of rules of what you're allowed to do, are now pre-configured and pre-managed, and you simply point to them. There is no more what you did in OBIEE, WebLogic scripting, or working with MBeans in order to create this from scratch. The 12C world will fit directly into OAC, and because 12C actually established that new standard, and you will have to watch out the older your installation is. So as I said, for example, 11G, or even when you started before, watch out that you actually take over and you match what's being taken over. Then it will be migrated, but watch out for it. And the important bit here is really think about security and plan for it before starting the modernization. We really want to discourage the potential issues here, because if you do the approach of saying, well, we're just going to put anything into OAC and think about security later, that's not going to work, because your whole catalog is based on that security. So who has access to what in the catalog is based on security. Who has access to what functionally, meaning can I create analyses, can I create dashboards, and especially when you move over into OAC, what about all the new stuff? Maybe we didn't even use data visualization. So who should be able to use this now? Should everybody by default get the right to use data visualization, the data flows, the data engineering, the AI and ML parts? These are things that you need to think about because, again, it didn't exist before for you when you're coming from OBIE. This is all new. So maybe you'll actually migrate things and you realize, oh, actually now in the new world, there's this whole second kind of way of interpreting data that we have that nobody had before, but now everybody has just by default because we simply migrated it and didn't verify. Watch out for this. The OAC security is in the lead, and whatever the OAC security in the lead says, like for example, you have the data visualization content author, then you are a content author and you have all the new functionalities. Again, question becoming, should everybody in your organization actually have this? So add to extended here, but don't replace it. And oops, one click too far. And so this for me wraps up the main part, meaning the process, pre-migration, post-migration steps, and the issues. I would now like to go over to the Q&A phase for actually handing back over to Alexander. Let me just quickly start my video again. Right. Let's see. I'm going to stop the share of the slides for a moment.
Well, let's just give some time and see if questions come up. There was one feedback, which was very kind. Thank you very much for your feedback, but it was not a question. What are typical questions, Christian, people would reach out to you?
So yeah, the typical questions, I mean, I've talked about it long because this is something that I really face in almost every single upgrade project. That's definitely the security. Again, simply because of when we're moving from an on-premises world into a cloud world, we're moving from something that is completely freely modifiable and configurable into something that is basically a black box with a couple of knobs and twists on the outside. So a lot of customers out there have, very much institutionalized processes that are pretty much code-based. And obviously, when you go into the cloud, yes, we have a lot of APIs, we have a lot of interfaces that allow you to automate these things, but you do not actually touch the nitty-gritty interiors anymore. So this is done, because what we have here is, we're not talking about bare bone cloud. So we're not talking about, bare metal stuff where you install things. We're talking about basically the next higher level of aggregation, which is platform as a service. And obviously, if we went into SaaS, or software as a service, you would even have less of these interactivities and modifying capabilities. But this very first step to go from on-premises to platform as a service, that is conceptually a huge change for a lot of people out there. And this is where we actually face the most issues, simply because for a lot of departments and for a lot of implementations, this is literally their first experience with cloud. This is the first time they do something in the cloud. And stuff like security, how do you parameterize things? How do you, modify things? And also, and that's one of the really, really important parts, how do you connect to data? That is key, because yeah, you're in your data center, you have one server, you have the other server, they're on the same network. I mean, yeah, cool, I give the address and they can talk to each other. Now we face completely different challenges. We are in the cloud, databases in the on-premises data center. How do we do this? We are in the cloud, we have another database in the cloud, okay, no problem. But we are in the cloud, meaning Oracle Cloud, and then we have data in something else like Google or Amazon. Well, then you're talking a completely different story, because then you're actually not just doing cloud or to on-premises or intra-cloud, then you're doing actually cross-cloud. You're jumping provider, you're jumping database technology, you're jumping maybe, the languages that the actual APIs talk. And these are really important things. And luckily, we're very much supported by the product itself, because in terms of data, the question is not what can we read, but as soon as we can read it, we can analyze it. So it's more on the backend side that can we establish the connectivity? Is there something blocking on the GCP side? Is there something blocking on the AWS side? It's more this. So the let's say the job of somebody running OSE compared to the job of somebody running OBIEE is in many aspects similar, but in others completely different, because you're actually looking at different things. You're actually doing different things. And what we really see is, as soon as people have become comfortable with the cloud moves, the cloud platform is established, what they're actually doing is they themselves, they change their kind of job profile, because they're no longer fiddling around with config files or, hey, I need to restart this server, I need to patch this one. What they're actually doing is ensuring that the right people have access to the right data and supporting them in making beneficial day-to-day tasks with the data.
It's a big step, but it's also an opportunity for you to simplify IT landscape, business processes, and general processes, right?
The word opportunity is really the correct one. Yeah.
We're hitting almost the top of the hour. I'm just going to have a couple of slides at the end. Thank you very much for your presentation, of course. Thanks everybody for attending today's sessions. Thanks, Christian, for your presentation, and our panelists as well. And see you tomorrow with the next session of Cloud Coaching. Have a great day, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.